Right, yes guys, hope you are all good, having a good day so far, whatever time you're watching this. Today is legs and arms day, and title is a little bit misleading because it's leg day primarily. Well, it's a leg day that is a little bit glute and hamstring biased. Still a good few sets of quads in there, still got 4 productive direct sets of quads. However, it has got a few more glute movements, a few more hamstring movements than I do in my other leg session. I think, if I've worked out the sets and that correctly, which a few more glute movements at least for sure. However, I've also thrown some arms into the mix just because I'm testing out training my triceps at 3 times per week frequency. So I basically do 3 sets of triceps at the end of both of my upper body days, and then I'm trialing out just throwing an extra set in at the start of this day while my triceps are fully fresh, just so I can get a little bit of extra stimulus. Triceps are a weaker point on my physique and definitely an area that I do want to bring up. And yeah, it's 1 extra set. It's not necessarily gonna kill my recovery capabilities too much, or at all, if anything. So yeah, I'm just seeing how that goes for the next couple of weeks, whether I am recovering fine, which at the moment I seem to be. So as far as I'm aware, I can just keep running this extra set of triceps at the start of this day, and then after that set of triceps, I then move on to the gym like a single arm preacher curl, as I have been doing for the last couple of months. And then I get stuck into the leg work, so adductor, and then it would be stiff legs, and then onto my leg presses, and then onto the glute drive. However, I've kind of known this for a while now. I don't really get on very well with stiff legs, and that's not me saying this in a sense of, I find them too hard, or I don't like doing them, or whatnot. Stiff legs are a movement that I don't connect very well with. I find that as I start chasing progressions in terms of load, once I've sort of roughly standardized my execution, I noticed that as I start to add more load, my lower back just seems to round excessively, and that's not really productive or conducive to my goals. I find that with RDLs, I've been able to progress those both in terms of my execution and in terms of loading and the amount of reps I'm doing. Dumbbell RDLs, that is, that I have been doing, because I haven't done a barbell RDL in close to 2 years now, I think. So that is what I'm going to be putting in instead. I'm going to be trialing out barbell RDLs for the first time in a few years. So I'm kind of excited. I prefer RDLs, to be honest. I think it's because I've done RDLs for longer. So like I said, I haven't done them in a couple of years, but barbell RDLs were the exercise that I've basically done since I started training. And then I took them out and put stiff legs in, let's say a couple of years ago. But now I've decided to put them back into the plan, or at least for a couple of weeks. I'll trial them out, see if they do feel as good as I expect them to feel, and as good as they have felt in the past, with me now being more skilled when it comes to actually hinging properly and not just shithousing my form like I have done previously when I was younger. So we'll see. I've got a good feeling about them, but I'm going to place those a little bit later on into the session. So usually the session layout would be adductor, then stiff legs, then onto my leg presses, then glute drive, then calves, then abs, and then go home. However, I've started putting abs onto my rest days now, so I'm currently training abs 3 times a week. That's now a total of 1 extra set of abs that I'm doing per week. So I was previously doing 5 sets split over both of my end of my lower body days. Now I'm doing 6 sets split over basically 3 rest days. So yeah, I'm going to see how that feels as well. It's just so I can sort of reduce the amount of time that I'm spending in the gym on my lower body days, because they're exhausting, which is not a bad thing by any means. But if I can hit them when I'm a little bit fresher, I've not already done a full leg session prior to them, they will be more productive. So yeah, it's only 2 sets as well. It literally takes maybe 5 minutes when I go in on my rest days and just do some mobility work. And I can just do those at the leisure centre near my house, which means I'm not going out of my way necessarily to actually get to the gym to do them. So it's not an issue by any means. So the layout of today's session will be the single arm cable tricep extension. Then we'll move on to the single arm machine preacher curl, gym like machine. Then onto adductors. So none of that will change, except instead of moving straight onto stiff legs, I'm going to do the glute drive, because that has been stalling a little bit at the moment, and because it is a short and biased movement, by placing that a little bit earlier on in my session, when I guess my glutes are still fresh before they have fatigued, I will be able to get more out of that movement and hopefully get the ball rolling in terms of progressions again. In fact, change my mind, I'm going to do seated hamstring curls before I do the glute drive, just so I can get that knee joint fully warm. Even though your knee isn't the primary joint that's being moved on a glute drive, it's your hips. it's just good to get my knee warm because my knee isn't the most sturdy of joints at the moment. So yeah, I'm going to do seated ham curl, then onto the glute drive, then onto my main leg presses. And usually it would be the gym local hip press to start. However, that has been sold, so that's no longer an option in the gym. So I'm probably going to go with the hammer strength hip press, which I tried last session and quite liked it, to be honest. I've not done it in a while. It's a different resistance profile. It's a lot more biased in the short. However, given the fact that's my first leg press in this session, that's kind of what I want, to be fair. Then after that, I'll move on to the gym local pendulum. Hopefully that's still there. I've not been in a couple of days. Hopefully he hasn't sold it in that time, but yeah, I'll move on to that. And then I will move on to the barbell RDL and then finish off with calves, and then we'll call it a day. So yeah, looking forward to the session. I haven't filmed this lower session in particular for the YouTube in a couple of weeks, so it'll be good to get this back on there. And yeah, I'll catch you in the gym. Adios. Right, as I previously mentioned, starting out this session with the single arm cable tricep extension. Now, the only reason I'm doing this single arm as opposed to just setting up 2 cables is because the other side of this cable is broken, and the Cybex, I don't think it's a Cybex Bravo, it's a different type of Cybex cable. One of the cables is like jammed, which basically makes one side heavier than the other, which is not what you want because you want both sides to be even. The other cables upstairs are spaced a little bit further away from each other, whereas the ones down here are more narrow, which is what I want for this exercise in particular. I don't want to be trying to extend my arms out completely. I want to be extending them down at, let's say, more of a 45-degree angle, as you can see here. So I'm therefore just doing them single arm, just nice and easy. I can also hold on to the handle as I do this for bracing, which is definitely important. Otherwise, I'll probably be swaying around a little bit and taking tension off of my tricep. I'm also doing this exercise with a cuff as opposed to just holding on to the little ball of the handles. Just for the sole reason is it's more comfortable. I can get a bit more power output out of the tricep as opposed to when I'm just holding the ball, which is what I want. Even if it is just an extra rep, that is extra tension and therefore will result in more muscle being built. I'm also focusing on making sure that the only movement that is taking place during this exercise is at the elbow joint. There should be absolutely minimal movement at my shoulder and minimal movement anywhere else, like my back or legs or anything. Everything should be pretty static, aside from my wrist moving up towards my shoulder and away from my shoulder. So yeah, just the 1 set each arm on there, which felt very good. Helped get a bit of blood into my elbow joint and just allows me to hit my triceps first thing when I'm mentally fresh and when I also have the most energy, because like I previously mentioned, my triceps are a bit of a weaker point on my physique, which I do want to bring up, so they are a priority. We're then moving on to the single arm preach curl on the gym local machine, which is, like I always mention, one of the best bicep curls in the game. I'm just showing you my 3rd set with my left arm here, but I did 3 sets total for both arms, of course. First set managed 9 reps with 30 on the pin, and then 2nd set managed 11 reps with 25 on the pin, 3rd set 13 reps with 20 on the pin. So as I usually do, start off with heavier weight and usually get less reps, and then taper the weight down as the sets go on and taper the reps up. And all of these sets, as you can see, are being taken to failure when this last rep eventually rolls around. Now, as you can see here in the video, I look like I'm in significant amounts of pain here on this exercise, which I was, because when you are training your biceps or any small muscle group in particular, when you are being accurate with how you're executing the movement, all the tension is being placed on that muscle, and the other supporting muscles in other compound exercises aren't being recruited to help support this exercise. This means that a lot of blood is being drawn into that one muscle, which makes it very painful to continue doing the reps in this sort of fashion as the set goes on. But building a lot of muscle is not supposed to be an easy task. Your bodies are not designed to be much more muscular than they are naturally, without any resistance training, that is, because muscle is an adaptation to a stimulus that is being placed on the body, which is usually a stress response through heavy resistance training, which basically means a lot of your ability to build muscle will come down to how much you can actually tolerate the pain that comes from very difficult training and very difficult sets. And I definitely find that to be more the case when it comes to your leg exercises, your leg isolation movements in particular, such as lying hamstring curl, leg extension. Because if you're doing these exercises correctly, you should only be using that one target muscle, whether that is the quads or the hamstrings, and that should be very painful because those are big muscles. So when a lot of blood is drawn into them, that is painful. And that is why a lot of people do not have good legs, because they simply cannot tolerate the pain that very hard leg training just comes with. Which is why having good leg development, in my opinion, is like a badge of honour, because If I see someone with really good legs, I know that they can handle a lot of pain. I know they can push very hard through a lot of physical difficulty, and that's a respectable trait. So get good legs can earn you respect from other people with good legs if you care about that. But yeah, all 3 sets of biceps felt very good, very accurate, and also very difficult, as they all should. We're then moving on to the first leg exercise, which is the adductor, and I have seatbelted myself into this one. And the seatbelt, I've noticed with certain movements, has definitely been beneficial, such as, let's say, the seated hamstring curl, lying hamstring curl. Both of those, it's been an absolute game changer for. But for certain exercises, like the hammer strength hip press, for example, it's not actually serving me too much of a benefit, which I'll show you when we eventually roll around to this exercise in a few different exercises time. But it has been very beneficial for me on the adductor because it's helping cue me to not allow my hips to shift forward or rise during this movement, which is a bad habit that I've previously gotten myself into. And when your hips do shift around on the adductor, that is taking tension off the target muscle and therefore making the exercise less effective, which is not what we want. And it also kind of acts like a bit of a belt. It's something to sort of brace against, which will therefore help your stability and just general power output as a whole. So yeah, one set on there felt very good. I think I got 14 reps with the stack and a little add-on weight, which I imagine weighs maybe like 2 or 3 kilos. So yeah, felt good. Then moving on to the seated hamstring curl. And the top set on here, I got about 7.5 reps, and then with the back off, I dropped the pin by just 1, and I got 9 reps, which is exactly what I wanted because that is a rep up from last week. So buzzing with that. Like I previously mentioned, I am using the seatbelt on this exercise, and that has been a game changer in terms of, similar to the adductor, just keeping my hips in the position that I want it to, and also acting as a bit of a belt, something I can brace against and just get more general power output through my hamstrings. Therefore more mechanical tension, therefore more growth, which is what we want. I've also been trying to focus a lot more on trying to keep my rib cage in the exact same position throughout the whole set, which previously I've been in the habit of sort of arching my lower back, which puts a bit more tension onto my lower back and takes it off my hamstrings. Especially as the set gets more difficult, that's something that would start to happen, which is not what I want. I want the tension all on my hamstrings, obviously, because I want it to be as accurate as I can. But I also noticed that would slightly affect my movements to come, such as the leg presses and the pendulum squat. So yeah, happy with how both of those sets went, and that allowed me to get a good bit of blood into my knee joint, get them warmed up before I then move on to the glute drive. Now, previously within my program, I had done this exercise after I've done all my leg presses and after I've done stiff legs. However, I've decided to bring this a few exercises forward in the program for this session now. And the reason being is because it has been stalling a little bit in terms of my rep and load progressions over the last couple of sessions. And I think that is due to me doing all my leg presses and other movements of that nature beforehand, especially doing my hinges beforehand as well. And that is because this exercise is more of a shortened bias movement, which basically means it trains the glutes in the shortened position. And when it comes to shortened versus lengthened basically means when it's stretched, shortened basically means when it's fully contracted. And the more you train, you will get a better understanding of what exercises train the muscles in the shortened position and what exercises train them in the lengthened position. But it's not something you need to overly worry about until you are getting very, very sort of into this sort of game. So with me placing them a little bit closer to the start of my session before I've done any other more fatiguing movements, this allowed me to pretty much instantly take some progressions on these. So I went up a little bit in load based off how the warm-ups felt, and I also got a rep up on both sets. So, well, not a rep, maybe like half a rep, because I was getting about 5.5, then 7.5 previously with a little bit less load. Now I've added 1.25 kilo per side, and I have gotten 6 and 8. So very happy with both of those sets. Then after this, we are moving on to the hammer strength hip press. Previously, I was using the gym Lego hip press, but that has been sold. So I'm back on this one. And they are quite similar. The main difference is the fact that the hammer strength hip press is a little bit more difficult in the shortened position, which basically means as the rep goes on, as you are starting to lock your leg out, the tension kind of increases, whereas with the gym Lego one, there was a little bit more tension as you are starting the rep from the hole. So a little bit different, but based on where this leg press is actually placed in the session, it's actually better in that sense, because my quads are still fresh, and when your muscle is fresh, it's more easy to get it short as opposed to when it is already pre-fatigued. However, first set on here, after the 4th rep, my knee just basically conked out, as it has been doing here and there during the off season on certain movements. which isn't ideal. So I took off 5 kilos a side, did my back off set with 2 plates and a 10 kilo plate each side. So I think 100 kilos total, which is definitely not the strongest on here. However, I am getting perfect range of motion. It's controlled perfectly, and I am pausing in the stretch position, which a lot of people don't do on this exercise. And the reason I'm doing that is partly just so I can be more controlled and not hurt my knee as much as I have done in the past from just being crazy in terms of bouncing weights that I probably shouldn't really be lifting at the time out of the hole, and just placing a lot of tension on my knee. And also because when you do slow it down, kill any momentum, you are making sure that you are starting the movement with all the tension coming through your quads, as opposed to just using momentum to lift the weight for you essentially. And I have grew to actually enjoy this method of training a lot more than just going crazy and putting weights on that I don't really have the right to lift at that stage. But yeah, the second set on here felt a lot better. I managed to get 11 reps with this, and my knee felt pretty much perfect throughout. I've been focusing a lot more on trying to basically initiate any sort of quad compound movement through kind of my big toe, so making sure all the foot pressure is placed through my big toe as opposed to like the side of my foot, which I was doing previously. And I have noticed that I have felt a good bit more powerful, and I've also felt a lot less tension on my knee, which is what we want. And this second set on here absolutely fried my brain. I just came out of it so dazed. I could barely get up out of the machine. It was brutal. But in spite of that, we still had more exercises to crack on with, so straight into the pendulum. And this set was not the best because when I was going into it, I didn't have my feet in the exact foot position that I like. I usually like them a little bit lower down on this platform. I find I can just get a bit more power out of my quads as a whole. And mid-set as well, I noticed my seatbelt wasn't really adjusted properly. I didn't actually unrack the machine how I normally would, with my back in the position that I normally would. So it just didn't go exactly how I wanted it to. I got 5 reps on here, whereas the last time I got 7. So it is what it is. Next time I'll just rectify that, be a bit more composed going into it, make sure everything is set up perfectly. Then on to the second set. Second set was a lot better. I set myself up perfectly for it. Everything felt a lot smoother, pausing was better, and it was a lot more controlled in general. So that is a good rule of thumb. When it comes to getting psyched up for your sets, you do want to be very switched on mentally. However, if you get too psyched up, sometimes you can forget little cues in terms of maybe your foot positioning, maybe your bracing, how you actually position your body underneath certain exercises, whether that is like a pendulum squat machine. So you definitely need to find the right balance between getting psyched up enough to take the muscle to failure and really push yourself, and also being controlled and remembering your form cues. Now, the moment we've been waiting for, the RDL with the barbell as opposed to the stiff legs. So I decided to try 150 kilos based on how the warm-ups felt and moved. I did warm-ups with 60, then 100, then 140, just how I normally would with stiff legs, and then I decided to put 150 on. And in the moment, it felt very heavy, but looking at these, it didn't actually look as bad as it felt in the moment. But with it being a new exercise, as the weeks go on and the more times I do this movement, the more my body will get better at doing it and more efficient. So I'll likely see maybe 5 or 6 reps next session and more as the weeks go on, which I'm looking forward to. I probably would still say that at the moment I prefer doing it with dumbbells, but I don't necessarily want to do dumbbell RDLs twice a week. I do want to keep barbell in one time. We're then finishing off with the last exercise, which is the standing calf raise, not ab crunch anymore. I mean, previously I was still doing the standing calf raise, but like I previously mentioned, I'm doing abs on my rest days now, just so I can spend less time in the gym. And both sets on calves went pretty good. I'm sort of at a bit of a plateau in terms of weight here, but they are getting a little bit better each week in terms of how much you're doing them, so not too fussed. Calves are definitely a muscle which definitely respond well to training them in the stretch position a lot, so really trying to pause in the bottom when your calf is fully stretched. I have previously done like ridiculous amounts of weight on calves. I remember doing 5 plates a side on the Smith machine, calves doing like half reps back when I was like 17. Calves didn't really grow that much, or not necessarily as much as they have been growing at the moment. So it's definitely important to recognise what hasn't given you the best results and what is giving you the best results. Just continue doing what gives you the best results. And as you can see, it's very painful doing it this way. Right, let's quickly see how the legs are looking before I get locked in the gym. Right, that is the session wrapped up. And to be honest, I don't really have much energy left to speak. I'm absolutely written off after. To be honest, after that second set of the leg press, it's just, my head has been fried. But that's exactly what you want. You want to come out of leg sessions in particular feeling absolutely destroyed. So yeah, happy with how the session went. Obviously, I wrapped up most of it in the voiceover, but I switched the order of the session up a little bit. Kept pretty much the same exercises in, bar the stiff leg, which I replaced with the barbell RDL, which I was pretty happy with, to be fair. Watching the vid back, I thought it would have looked worse because it didn't feel like, obviously it's a new movement and I probably shouldn't have gone that heavy for it being a new movement, but it actually looked better on the video than it felt in person, if that makes any sense, than it actually felt in the moment, sorry. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Next week I'll probably stick with the 150, but as my body adjusts and gets used to that movement, it'll become more natural, and I'll probably get maybe like 5 or 6 next week, and then possibly even more as the weeks go on. So yeah, excited for that. The rest of the session went pretty well. Calves went well. All the isolations felt pretty good. Obviously the order was switched on a tiny bit, but that only by maybe like one exercise, so it didn't really affect like strength or anything. But yeah, just a good session in general. I didn't sleep too well last night, so I had a little bit of a nap before I came. I managed to get all the work that I had to do done throughout the day, so I managed to squeeze in a little like half an hour, 40-minute nap before I trained, which was nice. Went into it feeling a little bit more recovered. But yeah, sleep hasn't been the best the last couple of days. I've just been very busy when it comes to like work exams and stuff, and just work in general. So yeah, is what it is. Still got in, still had a productive session, and yeah, not much else to it. I am a little bit gutted that the gym level hip press has gone, but the hammer one, in all fairness, is just as good, if not better, to be fair. You can definitely get more depth out of it, so you can get more range of motion. The resistance curve is a little bit different, like I mentioned in the voiceover, but it's, to be honest, where I place it in this session, it's kind of more suitable, if anything. So yeah, happy with that. Now, I am potentially debating moving gyms to EP Jungle, because I trained there on Tuesday. I did my first lower session there of the week, because the squat press has gone from Kings now, and the squat press is pretty much the only leg press where I get absolutely zero, and I mean zero, knee discomfort on it. Whereas every other leg exercise in general tends to give me some grief, at least from time to time. Not always, some of them are always, like the side big hack, for example. That's almost every session. Whereas the squat press, I've literally never had any issues with it, and it feels fantastic. So yeah, I'm debating making the switch to EP, genuinely, just for that machine alone, because I do think it will reap rewards when it comes to my leg development. So yeah, it's just a thought. They're both the same sort of distance from my house and the same sort of distance from where I park my car at work, so it wouldn't add any extra time to like my commuting or anything. So yeah, it's just a thought. There's nothing certain as of yet, but if I do switch to EP, I think I'll probably keep this session almost the exact same. The only things that would change would be the pre-curl leg curl would switch to the prime leg curl, the adductor would switch to the prime adductor, the preacher curl would switch to, I think they've got a Strive preacher curl there, so I'll probably switch to that. The rest of it, sorry, the pendulum would also switch to the Monster pendulum. I think they have at EP, they don't have the Gym Loco one. I've never actually tried the Monster one, so I'd like to try that first before I do make the switch. But in all fairness, both gyms are pretty much the exact same. Equipment wise, they are very, very, very similar. EP does have a few extra stuff, but it's very similar. But yeah, for now, I'm probably going to stick at Kings, just because there is a new gym actually opening in Rochdale, which is about 20 minutes away from Kings, but the same sort of time from like my house and from work. And that's opening in September, and that looks really good as well. So yeah, I'm probably going to stick at Kings for the meantime, because the memberships at EP are like, if I was to sign up for the yearly one, which is like 25 quid cheaper per month, I'll say I'd be stuck there, which isn't a bad thing. It's probably one of the best gyms I've ever trained at. ever. So I'm not obviously like stuck there, but if I wanted to switch to the new muscle unit that's opening up in Rochdale, obviously I wouldn't really be able to do that because I could get a membership there and train there, but then I'd just be paying for 2 gym memberships, which is kind of pointless. So yeah, for at least the next 2 to 3 months, I'm probably going to be staying in Kings. But yeah, to wrap that up, good session. If I had to rate it, I would probably give that a 7 out of 10, 7.5 maybe. Pretty good across the board. So yeah, take care guys, I'll catch you in the next video.